Hey everyone, welcome back. And if you're new, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Eju.
Welcome, welcome. I'm Shirak.
And today we are going to talk about a new case, the
Awesome
Scott
case.
Peterson case. It goes back to the early 2000s, but it's bubbling back up again, getting hot. And
Yes.
today's topic is a second Peterson trial possible. And we're going to try to answer that today. But first,
But first, this is education entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research and always be kind to everyone, friends,
yes.
strangers.
Absolutely. Let's be kind everywhere. And thank you guys for all the comments. We're taking them in. We're trying to improve
Yes.
where we can. This continuous improvement. So, again, today we are going to talk about, is a second Scott Peterson trial possible? Okay. And
Yes.
we're going to get to that. But first, let me just explain where this all takes place. So, this is in California, Modesto. It's kind of funny because I know a couple of them have been in Colorado area, so we're kind of
CCs.
spanning out here.
Will be all the C's, you know this.
All the steez. Hey, speaking of which, every time I do these shows, I get how animated I get. Somebody says I'm doing a shtick, so you live with me, Shrocked. Am I doing a stick, or I'm always like this?
That's it.
That's me, man. So I'm not doing a stick. Hey, I try to keep things positive. It's just the way I am,
Yeah, we try to
No
keep things
shtick here.
positive,
Let me
even
tell
though we're
you.
talking about crimes.
I think I'm more goofier off of camera, but that's besides the point. When I'm in a good mood, which normally I am. All right. So today we're going to do a quick background story about the Scott and Lacey Peterson case. If you want a more detailed, we're not really a story based channel. We try to get into more of like the evidence and different specific topics, little deep dives. But if you want to, there's plenty other A&E. God, I forgot all the other ones. There's plenty of places on YouTube you can find the actual story if you want to go into detail. In fact, they got like 6 episodes for like an hour long on the topic. But we're going to quickly go through that. We're going to go through the key evidence. The key evidence that was against Scott Peterson kind of rolled up, the new evidence that could exonerate him. And also, we're going to get to the question at the end, is a second Peterson trial possible, which is the name of this whole story. And by the way, this is a 2-parter. This part will be, is a trial possible? And then the next episode, which is going to be very interesting, there's a lot of cool topics on that one. Could Scott Peterson go free? And that one will be a week from whatever this date is aired. So if this aired on Tuesday, it'll be the following Tuesday. You'll get the second parter, and that's going to be a really, really good one as well. Okay, so let's get into it now. So Scott and Lacey Peterson, okay, they met back in 1994. And they were married in 1997. Again, I'm kind of covering everything very high level. I'm not getting into the details of every year and so forth and so on. In 2000, they purchased a 3-bedroom bungalow, a 2-bath house, and Lacey was working a part-time job as a teacher, substitute teacher, and Scott was in this newly founded European fertilizer company. Okay. So in 2002, Lacey discovered she was pregnant with a due date of February 10th, 2003. So they're all excited. First child, things are moving along great. They got the relationship going. They got married. They got the house. And now they have a child on the way.
Great couple.
On December 23rd, 2002 at 5:45 p.m., Lacey and Scott went to Salon, the workplace of Lacey's sister, Amy, where Amy cuts hair, and she did each month. Now, the reason why I mention this is because the last 3 people known to have spoken to Lacey before she disappeared was Amy, which is her sister, Sharon, which is Lacey's mom, and Scott. And that's just important to know for down the road, because Scott later told police that he saw his wife about 9:30 a.m. on December 24th, Christmas Eve, and he left to go fishing at Berkeley Marina. He said Lacey was watching Martha Stewart, and I think he was able to remember the exact episode and everything. So she was supposedly watching that at that time. So Scott said he returned home the afternoon, found Lacey's car in the driveway and the house empty. I didn't put all the details in. His dog, their dog, I should say, was left roaming around with the leash still on the dog. I just want to mention that, even though it's not in here. It's just from some additional details. I guess he showered, he's washed his clothes, maybe figured that she was going to be back. He went to the neighbor's house. Again, I'm just paraphrasing. I know there's a lot of words on here. I'm just paraphrasing a little bit so we can, get the background of the story. So he went next door neighbor to see, if, if they seen Lacey. And what's interesting is the neighbor recalled, and also some family and friends recalled
Seeing
that he
Lacey.
was supposed to go golfing or that he went golfing.
Mm.
So just keep that in mind. Why did he say later to authorities he went fishing and took his boat out,
Mm-hmm.
but yet told some people he's going golfing? Maybe he changed his mind. Or if you're on the other side of the fence, maybe he's did that to cover up something. So just to mention that. So Scott called his mother-in-law, Sharon, to ask, if they saw Lacey, and said that, that was the first time that they learned that Lacey was missing.
Mm.
Okay. So Scott and Lacey's stepfather both reported Lacey missing at that time. And then police received the report of her disappearance shortly before 6 p.m. That's December 24th. At the time of the disappearance, meaning Lacey, she was 7.5 months pregnant. So she was pretty far along.
Yeah, she
Shrock.
was.
Okay. All right. So that's pretty much just is a very quick. Shrock and I have watched a bunch of these episodes. Again, this
Three to
was a
4
very
hours.
hot topic in the early 2000s. Okay. Like it was global. People all over the world, it was very, very talked about every day. On January 15, 2003, police told Lacey's immediate family that Scott had been having an affair with Amber Fry. In fact, on January 17th, 2003, it became known that Scott had engaged in two other external affairs prior to the affair with the woman named Amber Fry. So again, all that. So we're going to get now into like the key evidence. That's a quick background story that we want to tell you. There's a lot more details in between, but that will be discussed and woven through when we talk about the trial. And again, this is bubbling up.
It is. It's like on fire right now. It's
Oh
gonna
yeah,
be
and if this second trial
trial.
does go to fruition, it's going to get all fired up all over again.
Yes.
And there's a good possibility, but I don't want to give that. That's at the end. I don't want to give that away too early. Shot. I get excited. I just want to go right to the heart of it. But let's step through this. Let's talk about the evidence, okay? Specifically, the evidence against Scott Peterson. What are the main things? So Peterson was having an affair with a woman named Amber Fry, who testified against him and cooperated with law enforcement. If you know anything about this case, they show her over and over again. That one moment she walks into the news conference room and she just lays it out there and talks about, yes, I had an affair. I had no clue he was married. I feel bad for the family. I thought it was very well done.
He lied to her. So
yep. She told police that, Peterson told her, I think it was early. I think it was like in November. It was well before that Peterson said that his wife died.
I believe the date something was like November 9th. I don't know what I keep
something. It was early on, but Peter said that
yeah.
his wife had died, and
But just to be clear, they only saw. I think he just started the affair like in November anyway. So
yeah, I think they were dated for a little bit.
They said a handful of times they saw each other. So
yeah, Christmas party and some other things. Yeah, but good point. Excelente. And in the recorded calls, he told her he didn't want to be a father and was considering a vasectomy, according to court documents. And by the way, again, there's just so much to this case, but she went to authorities and she started recording him. I guess they went to Radio Shack and they bought this device. And for younger people don't know what Radio Shack is, I don't know if they're still around anymore.
Right.
There's a really cool store that you can go in and buy a lot of like wires, electronics, recording devices, maybe VCRs. I can't remember back in the day. All kinds of stuff. It was pretty cool because radios, walkie-talkies, CB radios, things like that.
Pretty cool store.
Really cool store, I thought. And so they bought a little recording device, and she recorded, I forgot how many hours. I think it's like 27 hours worth of stuff. It was interesting during, before, and even after she went on record, that conference that she did.
Yes.
Which was interesting. He said he was proud of her for doing it. It's really weird, but there's all this detail along with that. For our purposes, we're going to talk about the evidence. So Peterson, who lived in Modesto at the time of the murder, told the police he was fishing in did I say it right? Berkeley, the day of his wife's disappearance. Okay. Her remains and the remains of their son Connor were discovered in San Francisco Bay. Okay. And this is all like the key evidence because he said he went fishing.
At least over what It was about
It was,
months
yeah, it
ago.
was like maybe 6, don't quote me, I should
Six to
know
eight.
this
Yeah,
offhand.
it was like
It was a
six
little
to
bit
eight
after. It
weeks.
wasn't too real long, but yep, they found her. There was
Yeah.
like weights around her neck and arms. And they found her and her dispelled son, very sad, in the San Francisco Bay,
Well, they didn't find the whole entire body. They just found
with
his
pieces.
the torso.
Yeah.
I remember they saying that
Yep.
the torso. They didn't find
So
like her entire body though.
it's and then the prosecutors maintain that the Melinda Burglary, I can't even talk.
Mhm.
Burglary. Oh my God.
Burglary.
Thank you. Across the street from the Peterson home happened on December 26th after
Yes,
Lacey
that's
Peterson
another key.
was already missing.
A burglary.
However,
Yeah.
they say, which I don't understand, I have to get the court documents. This is one of my follow-ups from doing this review. The officials said it was December 26th, but the people who actually saw the van and saw the suspicious people,
Yeah.
they said no, it was clearly December 24th.
That's a discrepancy
So
there.
that's a
Yeah.
discrepancy. And we'll get into that in the next episode when we talk about, could Scott get, released at some point or be set free. All right. Key evidence against Scott Peterson continued. Peterson had bleach his hair blonde and was carrying $10,000 in cash and his brother's passport near the Mexico border when he was arrested after Frey came forward. I also heard that it was also his driver's license. So I'm not sure if it's driver's license and passport, one or the other. But basically, his brother's
Yeah, he had his
identification.
driving license too. I've seen that.
Yeah, I thought it was the driver's license as well. So some of the family members, I believe on Peterson's side, Scott's side, said, oh, he was carrying the money because there was some kind of transaction that got done incorrectly and he had to take the money out to pay his brother back or some kind of, I'm probably saying it incorrectly. I just caught the bits and pieces of it. But basically, he was down there because he was going golfing and it's near the border, but it's all very suspicious. Oops, this time was my knee. Very suspicious.
Yeah,
But
just because he dyed his hair too, and they were thinking he was probably gonna flee.
Yeah, exactly. So it's hard to believe that, he's just carrying that money because of this and he was going golfing because of that. And it's all who you believe. We're just mentioning why the key pieces of evidence that they're saying is being brought forward against him. So before I get into the evidence that could exonerate him, let me at least explain what the Los Angeles Innocence Project is, because they play a part in this whole thing.
Yeah.
So their mission is really to exonerate the wrongly convicted, to free the wrongly incarcerated, uncover, remediate past misuse of forensic and other scientific evidence in the courtroom, improve the standards of the evidence in the courtroom, basically the policies, improve the dialogue between the scientists and the stakeholders in the criminal legal system, reform the legal system to prevent future injustice. So they're doing what they can to take like specifically DNA and a lot of these different procedures, make them better, make them more accurate, try to reduce the wrongly convicted. Okay. And they play a part in this, which is important, which I'll mention later on. I'll get into details as to their record and how they play into this. So in terms of the new evidence that could exonerate Scott Peterson, there's new DNA testing on the hammer linked to the burglary across the street from the Peterson family, as well as a stained mattress found in the burnout van parked less than a mile away. Okay, that's the two pieces of the DNA they're going to retest. Peterson and his supporters have long focused on the suspects who allegedly burglarized the Medina family house across the street from their home, meaning Lacey and Scott's home. Allegedly, they could have killed his wife. Right. So let me go a little bit further into this specifically. And Shrock, keep me honest here. What they're theorizing, okay, this is just a theory, is Lacey was the type of person where she would call out things if she saw things that were out of place. Or so in other words, if she saw these people cross the street in the van that looked suspicious, she would say something. This is allegedly, there was somebody heard somebody say, mind your own business. Somebody heard somebody say that type of thing, that these guys said something to somebody like, mind your own business.
Yeah, like she was walking the dog.
Walking the dog.
Area, and she saw this and she was like, hey, and
So we don't know, right? And we don't know if she said something
And they just
to
grabbed her
them,
because she probably saw their face and
saw their face, or saw what was in the van,
mhm.
and they could have just, knocked her in the head and took her in the van and just dealt with her. And that happens, and that's a possibility. That's why the supporters of Scott are saying, this is still a possibility. You got the DNA, you need to test it. And oh, by the way, the van was found a mile from the Peterson home, raising the possibility it could have played
A role
a
in the
role in the
murder.
murder. Okay. So the van was set on fire December 25th, 2002 in Modesto, day after the burglary at the home near the Peterson residence. Inside the van was the mattress, and one investigator had said appeared to be bloodstains. Now, here's the other interesting thing. Notice the
25th.
date. If the van was set on fire the 25th, how can the authorities say
The burglary happened in
it happened
26.
26? And I'm being neutral here. I'm not saying I'm pro that Scott's innocent or guilty.
Right.
I'm just stating the inconsistencies and
Exactly.
try to be forward on that.
That's a good point.
Okay, and then let's see. Okay, so the Innocent Project that I just mentioned, it was good for me to just kind of go through that first so you understand who they are. They alleged that the evidence from the van owner that shows that the van did not have the mattress inside before it was stolen and before Lacey Peterson's killing, meaning the evidence they have that the van owner shows that the van was empty beforehand and then later the mattress was there. It's a smaller point, but just want
Right.
to
And I
mention
think
that.
what they mentioned with the mattress had blood on the blood stains on the mattress.
Right, and
You
that's
want to
where
be
they're
clear
gonna
on
lift.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And that's where they're gonna lift and test the DNA. And of course, now today's DNA techniques are so more advanced than
Exactly.
it was 20 years ago. Actually, a little bit more than 20 years ago. So let's talk about the hearing schedule because I just want to let you guys know like what is the latest as far as we know. The additional hearings on DNA evidence and discovery have been scheduled for May 29th and July 15th. And I don't know specifics on the date. We just literally picked this back up a few days from this recording. So we kind of got really excited in terms of wanting to know more from what we knew from before. And we're just kind of grabbing everything we can. He's been in prison Scott's been in prison since 2005. And this is going to be a big deciding factor one way or the other. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me go next before we get into the answering or talking about the specific question. Would there be another, a second trial? What's a possibility of that? Before we get into that, I did build out Shirok. If you're new to our channel, we have a crime board.
Yep.
So this is just a first draft of our crime board. And by the way, if you like what we're doing so far, like where we're going with this,
Yeah.
please take a moment to subscribe. It would really mean a lot to us. And thank you so much. But if you're new, or if you've been around with us, we like to do a crime board because it's like a speaking point and we can gather our thoughts. So really quickly, it's understood that she went missing and probably passed away on December 24th. It's not a fact because we don't know if it was a day later. The assumption is the 24th. I don't think they have a really pinpoint date. The fact is she was a victim along with baby Connor. Fact is Scott Peterson did get convicted. Where the actual
Murder
death
took
occurred,
place.
we're not sure. It could have been in the house. It could have been in the van. It could have been, not sure. That's why there's a question mark.
There was no
Motive.
evidence in the house. No blood.
No evidence in the
whatsoever.
house. Great point, Shirok.
No evidence
Exactly.
whatsoever.
No evidence in the house. Motive. You could say that, he didn't want to have a child, or maybe it was the girlfriend. I don't know if there was money. Motive is a little unclear. It could be one or all the above or many of them. How it was done, it could have been drowning, but it also could have been blunt force trauma. We're not sure specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's a question mark. Another question mark is suspects. Obviously, we know Scott Peterson is a suspect because he's convicted,
Mm-hmm.
but I also put some of the burglars there as well as suspects because that's what this whole DNA thing is all about. So I put a question mark only because what comes out of this could shed some more light. Maybe, maybe not, depending on what side of the fence you're on. And then the fact that the body was found in San Francisco Bay. So if you're new to the story or new to this, this is just a very high level of some of the things to put together in summary. Okay.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about, what's the possibility of Scott getting a second trial. I think the first thing you have to look at is the Los Angeles Innocent Project picked this up. In almost half the cases that they've picked up,
This is interesting.
client's
Yeah.
guilt is confirmed by DNA testing. Okay. But let's look at the percentages. All of the cases taken by the Innocent Project so far, 43% of clients were proven innocent.
That's really
42% was confirmed guilty. 15% of the cases was inconclusive. For if you take the 15% and spread it, which is say, it's pretty much 50. Yeah, there you go. Exactly, right?
Yeah. And
So
that's not even good though. I don't think 50% is proven innocent.
yeah. Well,
Well,
what is good? It's a good in a sense where it's bad. It's bad because innocent people are put in jail, obviously, or in prison, obviously. But it's also good if you look at the other way. It's also good that this project helps to get those people out of prison. So 50% is pretty good. And it also states a little bit to the reputation, which is a good thing, meaning if this is a high percentage, they're not just taking any old case. They try to pick the cases that are worth it. Now, I'm not going to say, oh, because they're taking this case, they think Scott is innocent. They probably do. I'm not saying we think that way. We're being very neutral on this. We want to see what the evidence and all the. This is still early to tell. We want to see what the results.
This is pretty good. The Los Angeles Innocent Project exists.
Exactly.
They out there, and they doing a great job.
We just want to say the percentages of their track record.
Yeah.
So obviously now I'm neutral on this because one can say, well, geez, they must feel at least 50-50 that Scott is innocent. But let's I'm just trying to be a realist here. It's a high profile case.
Yes, it is.
So they can, I don't know what they say, and allegedly go do your own research on this. I don't know if they really feel, they probably do feel strongly he's innocent. But either way, it's a high profile case. But in any ways, it's a 50-50 shot.
But I'm glad they are involved.
Yeah. They're doing, this is good. It is a good thing. We want to free the wrongly convicted is huge. So what is the second, Peterson trial possible? Going back to that question. Well, if you take in consideration that they're involved in their track record, basically almost 50%, the new appeal really hinges on getting that DNA testing on the mattress and, of course, the hammer, wherever they have, in present day technology. Because if they're able to get, Lacey's blood or DNA on those items, you will see. I'm sure. I mean, I'm not a legal. We're not legal experts in terms of. We don't have a career in it. I can't say 100%, but I would think logically that if they have some of Lacey's DNA anywhere in question, that's going to open up the second trial because now they're going to reopen it. And if they do, and this is why there's a two-parter to our show, because we don't want to fit everything to a long episode because I think it's good to focus on these two pieces. But if they do open up this case, other things are going to come out, which are very interesting. Shrock, should I give him a little? I'll give him a little taste, a little preview what we're going to talk about next because this is key. But let's just say there's some people who swear that they saw Lacey at a really time that's very important. There's people who said that they saw Scott going out on his boat and what was in the boat. This is a little cliffhanger, so you got to watch the next episode. But then there's other stuff. That's a little teaser. But there's other things where if this case reopens, a lot of these people that supposedly the police didn't interview, and that comes out of the witnesses' own mouth that they didn't even talk to investigators, didn't even talk with them. They will probably come forward, and all that's going to be playing the mix. Now, I'm not saying one side of the fence or the other, but there's going to be a lot more discussion. But first, they have to get through this one piece of the DNA testing. So is it possible? Heck yes, especially if the DNA comes in the way they expected. If not, I think it's going to be very, very difficult.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. But the DNA shows proof, right? So that's what they.
Oh yeah, if Lacey's blood is on any of that stuff, okay. So for the folks wondering, well, how how is that going to really mean anything? Well, because of the burglary and supposedly being on Christmas Eve, not Christmas day after Christmas, and the blood's on the mattress and the blood's on the hammer, then it goes into the theory of how the death might have occurred and where she was, and all these other pieces will come into play, and they'll have to reopen the case to understand all those new pieces because it could play into other suspects either completely or partially, etc. What do you think, Shirak? What do you think of this whole
Yes,
piece?
everything is on the evidence. But one thing, some people already have him as guilty due to Lacey, is gone, and she also had little Connor, which was actually born 7.5 months. The baby was definitely there. So it's all about the evidence, right? What we can find. And one thing about this case is, like you said, is just so much information. A lot of the information that you hear is not accurate, is not true. But I think the media definitely played a huge part in him going to prison as well. But we'll talk about that
Yeah,
as well. But it's
yeah, we'll
just
talk about it.
basically,
Yeah,
yeah. But
absolutely.
it's all about the DNA testing. So we'll see what happens. We'll definitely keep you updated of what's going on because this is a case that we are interested in as well.
Yeah, because as Shirak mentioned, for those that really didn't know about the case 20 something years ago, or really wasn't enraptured at that time. So basically, back then, Scott really wasn't acting what most people would assume a person who just,
Exactly.
lost
Yeah.
their wife should act. But a lot of people, everybody's different. Some people act weird. Some people act the way people
Exactly. They
traditional.
didn't see any tears in his eyes. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just the public. Who knows? Behind doors, he could have been crying.
Or,
People
or could you got,
people say that you got to be strong, right? You got to be strong out, and you can't be crying and being a wimp. So he just didn't show too much emotion.
also too, it could be that he knew he had all these affairs. He was maybe afraid of it getting out, that his mistress was gonna find out. It could be a lot of things. But
They say he
again,
had a lot of affairs, but it's surprising. Only Amber Fry is the only one that came forth. What about the other ones?
well, I think because he was still involved with her at the time. That's why it was so.
No, I think if anyone was having an affair, they would have said something too, because this
I
is just so
think
huge.
so. It just wasn't part of the
And
initial
and
research
how
for
much
me.
and what's the evidence saying he had multiple affairs? I don't know. We just know for a fact he definitely had Amber Fry. So I'm gonna
Yeah,
just stick with Amber Fry.
she's the
I don't
big
even
one.
want to say the multiple affairs
Yeah,
because
yeah, she's the main one. And
yeah,
I was gonna say, and again, we're not saying he's innocent or guilty. We're just bringing the information. But you could definitely say that the media was definitely against him because you have public opinion. I mean, the guy comes out, they don't see a guy acting the way traditionally you should act. Then all of a
exactly.
sudden he has a mistress. Forget about it. But there is a lot of things, in all fairness, Shrock, there is a lot of things that he did that were very suspicious, like, the blonde hair, having the money, having
Well,
this,
you got to
so
think of it this way too. Imagine us being in his shoes. I may would have done the same thing. You're scared. First of all, imagine spending your life in prison. So sometimes people flee. And I know for a fact, I know people that just say, you know what, just to get it's something that comes to mind. So things happen when you under pressure and somebody's going to convict you for something you haven't done or you did. I'm not saying he did it or not because I don't know too much about the like saying I'm not gonna say he did it. I'm not gonna say he didn't do it, but things go through your mind as a human, and flee is one of them, especially when you're under pressure, thinking that you definitely going to go to jail for the rest of your life. He was on the death sentence. I mean, really? So things happened, and that's just one thing that he just thought of.
yeah, we talked about this when we were doing some investigation on this. Is no matter what side of fence you're on, there's people who have said, "Hey, I look at the Chris Watts case. Oh, he admitted to killing his whole family,
Right. And people still say
and
he's innocent.
he doesn't get the death penalty, anything like this. Here's, Scott Peterson, for right, wrong, or indifferent, all circumstantial stuff that builds up the case. You know, he didn't say like he did it. They didn't find really specific things, and he gets the death penalty. You know, everything is kind of unequal. But not to go too off track, but basically, this got a lot of attention way back when. It had a lot of opinions. But I think the DNA is going to be a big piece. It's if he is, let's just say he is quote unquote innocent, and the DA comes back inconclusive or doesn't show Lacey's blood, it still theoretically could mean that he's innocent. It doesn't necessarily because you still have all those eyewitnesses that 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 could change
Right.
this whole
So they
thing.
always like what
So
they say
DNA is not
innocent.
not seriously end all be all, but I think
Mhm.
to get the second trial, it is going to be the end all be all, and I think that's where it comes down to.
Right. You're supposed to be innocent until
So,
proven guilty, right?
yeah. So it'll be really interesting. We want to see what happens here. We're gonna stay on top of it. Again, next week we got the episode to talk about could Scott go free, where we're gonna go deeper dive into the specifics
Yes.
and the witnesses, who they are, and what they saw. That's gonna be a really good one. This one was just kind of setting the stage. We really appreciate you guys hanging in
Yes, we
there with
appreciate
us.
it. Thank you for
And
watching.
thank you for watching.
And
And
thank you
until
for
next time.
subscribing.
Yes, thank you so much. It means a lot to us. And there'll be a lot more good stuff. Thank you.